Alan Morales stood in front of the mirror and adjusted his tie for the 5th time. His hands were shaking slightly. Tonight was important, perhaps the most important night of his life so far. He was bringing his girlfriend Lily Watson to meet his family, and he was also bringing a small velvet box in his pocket. "You look fine," said his grandmother Elaine from the doorway of his bedroom. She was a striking woman in her 70s, with deep brown skin that seemed to glow with vitality, despite her age. Her hair was styled in neat silver twists and she wore a simple but elegant navy blue dress. Alan smiled at her reflection in the mirror. "I'm nervous, Gran. What if her parents don't like me?" Elaine walked over and straightened his already straight tie. "Then they're fools. But it doesn't matter what they think, it matters what Lily thinks." Alan had met Lily 3 years ago at the aerospace research facility where they both worked. He was an engineer specializing in communication systems while Lily worked in diplomatic relations. Their connection had been immediate and deep. What had taken time was gathering the courage to introduce Lily to his family and vice versa. Not because he was ashamed, far from it, but because the Watsons were known for their wealth, influence, and unfortunately their prejudices. "I know," Alan said, turning to face his grandmother. "I just want everything to go well. This means a lot to me." Elaine patted his cheek. "I know it does, son." The doorbell rang, and Alan's heart jumped. Elaine gave him a reassuring nod before heading downstairs to join the rest of the family in welcoming their guests. Alan took one deep breath, patted his pocket to make sure the ring was still there, and followed. Lily stood in the entryway of the Morales family home looking beautiful in a green dress that matched her eyes. Beside her were her parents. Gregory Watson, tall and imposing in an expensive suit that probably cost more than Alan's monthly salary, and Catherine Watson, slim and blonde with a frozen smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Welcome to our home," Elaine said warmly, extending her hand to the Watsons. "I'm Elaine Morales, Alan's grandmother." Gregory Watson looked at her hand for a moment too long before shaking it briefly. "Charmed," he said in a tone that suggested he was anything but. Catherine merely nodded. Lily rushed forward to give Elaine a hug. "It's so wonderful to finally meet you. Alan talks about you all the time." Elaine's face lit up with genuine pleasure. "All good things, I hope." "The best," Lily assured her. Alan's Uncle Rick and his wife Susan emerged from the kitchen carrying trays of appetizers. His cousins Danny and Zoe were setting the dining table. The Morales home was modest compared to what the Watsons were used to, but it was warm and filled with love. "Please make yourselves comfortable," Alan said, gesturing to the living room. "Dinner will be ready soon." As they moved to sit down, Alan noticed Gregory Watson looking around the home with barely concealed disdain. Catherine was surreptitiously checking the cushions before sitting on the couch. "So," Gregory said once they were seated, "Lily tells me you're an engineer at Starbridge Communications. Small outfit, isn't it?" Alan nodded. "It is, but we do important work. We've made significant advancements in long-range communication systems." Gregory made a dismissive sound. "Watson Interstellar has its own R&D division, you know. Hundreds of engineers. We're the leading contractor for the Space Colonization Initiative." "I'm aware," Alan said politely. "Your company has done impressive work." Elaine returned from helping in the kitchen with a tray of drinks. As she offered them around, Catherine accepted hers with 2 fingers, as if afraid of touching Elaine's hand. "Mrs. Morales," Gregory said, emphasizing the Mrs. slightly. "What did you do before retirement?" Elaine smiled. "It's Dr. Morales, actually. I was a researcher in linguistics and communication theory." Gregory raised an eyebrow. "Really? At which institution?" "Several," Elaine said mildly. "Most recently at the Global Science Foundation." Catherine made a small noise. "I wasn't aware. They had diverse hiring practices back then." The room went silent. Lily looked mortified. Alan felt heat rising to his face, but Elaine placed a calming hand on his shoulder. "Times were different," Elaine acknowledged, "but excellence has always found a way forward, Mrs. Watson." Dinner was announced, saving them from the awkward moment. As they moved to the dining room, Alan caught Lily's hand and squeezed it. She squeezed back, her eyes apologetic. The meal began pleasantly enough with Rick telling stories about Alan as a child that made everyone laugh. But as the wine flowed, Gregory became more direct in his questioning. "So, Alan," he said between bites of roast chicken, "what are your intentions with my daughter? She's used to a certain lifestyle, you understand." Before Alan could answer, Gregory continued, "The Watsons have been in the space industry for 3 generations. We have connections throughout the government and private sector. Lily could have her pick of suitors." Lily put down her fork with a clatter. "Dad, please." Alan took a deep breath. "Sir, I love your daughter. I can't offer her the wealth you can, but I can promise to cherish her every day of my life." Gregory snorted. "Love doesn't pay for vacations on the lunar colonies." "Greg," Catherine murmured, placing a warning hand on her husband's arm. Elaine was watching the exchange quietly, her expression unreadable. Alan felt his resolve strengthen as he looked at his grandmother. She had raised him after his parents died in a shuttle accident when he was 10. She had taught him dignity, perseverance, and the value of character over circumstance. "Actually," Alan said, standing up, "I was planning to do this later, but now seems like the right time." He moved to Lily's side and knelt down, pulling out the small velvet box. "Lily Watson, I love you more than I can say. Will you marry me?" Lily's hands flew to her mouth, tears springing to her eyes. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, of course I will." As Alan slipped the ring onto her finger, a modest diamond that had been his mother's, the Morales family erupted in cheers. The Watsons remained seated, Gregory's face dark with displeasure. "This is very sudden," Catherine said tightly. "We've been dating for 3 years, Mom," Lily pointed out, her eyes never leaving Alan's face. During dessert, Gregory made several, more cutting remarks, including a comment about people who don't know their place. Each time, Elaine responded with grace and poise, but Alan could see the hurt in her eyes. As the evening ended and the Watsons prepared to leave, Gregory pulled Alan aside. "You're making a mistake if you think you'll ever be accepted in our circles," he said quietly. "A boy from your background, with a grandmother like that, you're reaching above your station." Alan looked Gregory straight in the eye. "Sir, with all due respect, you don't know anything about my station, my background, or especially my grandmother." What Gregory Watson didn't know, what almost no one knew outside of highly classified government circles, was exactly who Dr. Elaine Morales was in the scientific community, and soon, very soon, he would find out. 3 weeks had passed since the engagement dinner, and wedding preparations were in full swing. Lily had insisted on having both families involved, despite Alan's concerns after the disastrous first meeting. They were now gathered at the Watson estate for what Gregory had called a proper planning session. The Watson home was exactly what Alan had expected: enormous, cold, and impersonal. Expensive art hung on the walls, but none of it looked like something chosen with love. It was all about showing wealth and status. "We've reserved the grand ballroom at the Celestial Hotel," Catherine Watson announced to the group seated in her pristine white living room. "It's the only venue suitable for a Watson wedding." Elaine Morales sat quietly on the edge of a stiff armchair, her back straight and her hands folded in her lap. She had come despite Alan's offer to handle the planning without her. "I won't hide from people like that," she had told him. "I never have before, and I'm too old to start now." "That sounds lovely," Susan, Alan's aunt, said politely about the venue. "But isn't the Celestial Hotel very expensive?" Gregory waved a dismissive hand. "We're covering the costs, naturally. Watson Interstellar just secured a major government contract for the new Mars colony communication systems." He looked pointedly at Alan. "Real communication systems, not theoretical research." Before Alan could respond, Lily spoke up. "Actually, Dad, Alan's team is doing groundbreaking work. They're not just improving Earth-to-Mars communications. They're developing systems that could potentially reach much farther." Gregory smiled thinly. "Of course they are, dear." The wedding planner, a nervous woman named Betty, began discussing the guest list. "The ballroom can accommodate up to 500 guests." "Perfect," Catherine said. "We have at least 400 important contacts that must be invited." And how many guests can Alan's family include? Lily asked. Catherine and Gregory exchanged a glance. Well, Catherine said slowly, we thought perhaps 50 would be appropriate for Alan's side. We'll need closer to 100, Alan said, firmly. My family isn't as small as you seem to think. Gregory's jaw tightened. Now see here, boy. Don't call me boy. Alan interrupted, his voice calm but firm. An uncomfortable silence fell over the room. Betty cleared her throat nervously. Perhaps we should discuss the wedding party, she suggested. Yes, Catherine seized on the change of topic. Lily will have her cousins Claire and Diane as bridesmaids, along with her friends from university. Lily nodded. And I'd like Elaine to be our matron of honor. The silence this time was even more profound. Darling, Catherine said with a strained smile, traditionally the matron of honor is the bride's mother or a very close female relative. Or a woman I deeply respect and want to honor, Lily replied. I want Elaine. Alan reached over and squeezed Lily's hand, feeling a rush of love for her. Gregory stood up abruptly. This is ridiculous. You cannot have that woman as your matron of honor. What will our friends think? Dad? Lily exclaimed. No, I want to hear this, Alan said, also standing. What exactly do you mean by that woman, Mr. Watson? Gregory's face flushed red. You know exactly what I mean. I'm afraid I don't, Alan said. Are you referring to Dr. Elaine Morales, former head researcher at the Global Science Foundation? The woman who raised me after my parents died? The woman who taught me everything I know about dignity and respect? Please, Elaine said softly, placing a hand on Alan's arm. This isn't necessary. I think it is, Alan insisted. I think it's time Mr. Watson spelled out exactly what his problem is with you. Before Gregory could respond, everyone's phones and tablets simultaneously let out the distinctive tone of an emergency broadcast alert. Alan pulled out his phone, expecting a weather warning or security notification. Instead, the screen showed an official announcement from the World Space Agency. He read it once, then twice, his heart racing. Oh my God, Lily whispered, looking up from her own device. Alan, is this? Alan nodded slowly. It's them. They're coming. For 10 years, humanity had known they weren't alone in the universe. The discovery of radio signals from the Arcturi, a technologically advanced species from a star system 30 light-years away, had changed everything. For a decade, Earth's best scientists had worked to establish communication, learning the Arcturi, language, and sharing information about human culture and science. And now, according to the announcement, an Arcturi delegation was coming to Earth for the first time. Gregory Watson's annoyance had vanished, replaced by excitement. This is incredible. The timing couldn't be better. Watson Interstellar must be at the forefront of this contact. Catherine was already on her phone. I'm calling Senator Bryant. We need to secure an invitation to the welcome ceremony. They're landing in 3 weeks, Rick noted, reading from his tablet. Right before the wedding. We'll have to postpone, Catherine said immediately. This is far more important than... We will not postpone, Lily interrupted firmly. The wedding happens as planned. Gregory wasn't listening. He was pacing the room, already strategizing. This could be worth trillions in new contracts. Alien, technology, new materials, propulsion systems beyond our current capabilities. Throughout the excitement, Elaine remained seated, her expression unreadable. Only Alan noticed when her phone buzzed with a private message. She read it, then quietly excused herself to step outside for a call. When she returned 10 minutes later, she said nothing about the call. But Alan knew his grandmother well enough to see she was holding back a smile. The planning session continued, though now Gregory and Catherine were distracted, constantly checking their phones for updates about the Arcturi arrival. They barely noticed when Elaine suggested several changes to the seating chart that gave her a more prominent position. As they were leaving, Alan's phone rang. The caller ID showed Dr. Phillips, WSA director. I need to take this, he told Lily, stepping away from the group. Alan, Dr. Phillips said when he answered, is your grandmother with you? Yes, she's here. We're just leaving the Watsons. Good. We need both of you at headquarters immediately. The protocol team is assembling. Alan glanced at his grandmother, who was watching him knowingly. The protocol team? But I'm not part of— You are now, Dr. Phillips interrupted. Your grandmother specifically requested you, and frankly, we're not in a position to deny her anything right now. Why? Alan asked, though he was beginning to suspect the answer. Because, Dr. Phillips said, the Arcsuri delegation specifically asked for her by name. They say they're coming here to meet Dr. Elaine Morales and her family. Alan looked across at Gregory and Catherine Watson, who were still talking excitedly about the alien arrival and all the business opportunities it might bring. We'll be right there, he told Dr. Phillips. Then he hung up and turned to his grandmother with wide eyes. You knew, he whispered. You've known all along. Elaine's eyes twinkled. I told you, Alan, excellence always finds a way forward. The World Space Agency headquarters buzzed with activity. People rushed through hallways carrying tablets and folders. Screens on every wall showed the approaching Arcsuri ship, now just beyond the moon's orbit. In 2 days, they would land on Earth. Alan sat beside his grandmother in the main conference room. Around them were top government officials, scientists, and military leaders. They had spent the past 2 weeks preparing for first contact. What the others didn't know was that this wasn't really first contact at all. Dr. Morales, the WSA director, said, Would you please explain the communication protocol one more time? Some of our security team are concerned about potential misunderstandings. Elaine nodded and stood up. Though she was the oldest person in the room, she commanded attention with ease. The Arcsuri communicate through a combination of sounds and subtle body movements, she explained. Their language has 7 tonal levels, unlike our typical 3. This is why most voice translation systems failed in early attempts. A military general frowned. And you're sure they come in peace? Their technology is far beyond ours. If they wanted to attack, they don't, Elaine said firmly. I've been in contact with them for 8 years, General. If they wanted to harm us, they could have done so already. Alan watched his grandmother with pride. For years, her work had been classified at the highest level. Only a handful of people knew that. Dr. Elaine Morales had been the first human to successfully establish two-way communication with the Arcsuri. There's something else you should know, Elaine continued. The Arcsuri have a strong sense of family honor. They consider my family, specifically my grandson Alan, to be important in these negotiations. The director nodded. Yes, you've explained. It's why we've included Alan in these meetings. Though I still don't understand why they're so interested in your family relationships. Elaine smiled slightly. The Arcsuri believe that how a society treats its elders reveals its true character. In their culture, wisdom is measured in relationships maintained across generations. As the meeting continued, Alan's phone buzzed with a message from Lily. Wedding rehearsal dinner tonight, don't forget. Mom is freaking out that you've been unavailable all week. He had barely seen Lily since the news of the Arcsuri arrival. His sudden inclusion in high-level meetings had raised many questions which he wasn't authorized to answer. The Watsons, desperate for information, had tried repeatedly to get details from him. That evening, Alan arrived at the upscale restaurant where the rehearsal dinner was being held. Lily rushed to hug him. I've missed you, she whispered. Dad has been impossible. He's pulled every string trying to get invited to the Arcsuri landing ceremony. Alan kissed her forehead. I've missed you too. Is my grandmother here yet? Not yet, Lily replied. My parents wanted to start without her, but I refused. Inside the private dining room, the Watsons and their friends were already drinking champagne. Gregory Watson's face darkened when he saw Alan. Finally decided to join us? He asked coldly. Too busy with your classified work to attend your own rehearsal dinner? I apologize for being late, Alan said calmly. It couldn't be helped. Catherine, Watson gave him a tight smile. Well, we're all very curious about what's so important. Working on some minor technical detail for the alien arrival, I suppose. Before Alan could answer, Gregory stepped closer. Listen here, Alan. I have contacts throughout the government. I know you're suddenly involved in the Arcturi preparations. What I can't figure out is why they would include a junior engineer from a small communication firm. I go where I'm needed, Mr. Watson, Alan replied evenly. Gregory lowered his voice. I've invested millions in preparation for this moment. Watson Interstellar is positioned to be the primary contractor for any technology exchange. Whatever you know, whatever access you have, I expect you to share it with your new family. Alan stared at him. That would be a violation of national security. Don't be dramatic. Gregory scoffed. We're about to be family. Family helps each other. The restaurant door opened and Elaine Morales entered. She wore a simple dark green dress, elegant but not flashy. Several heads turned to look at her. Not because of her clothing, but because her face had been on every news broadcast for the past week. The WSA had finally announced that Dr. Elaine Morales would be the chief human representative greeting the Arcturi delegation. Her image was now recognizable worldwide, though few knew the full extent of her involvement. Gregory's eyes widened as he saw her. He looked back at Alan, then again at Elaine, making the connection at last. Your grandmother, he said slowly. She's that Dr. Morales. Alan nodded. The very same. Catherine Watson nearly dropped her champagne glass. But that's impossible, she's black? Alan supplied. Female? Old? Which of those things makes it impossible, Mrs. Watson? Before she could respond, Elaine walked over to join them. Good evening, everyone. I apologize for my tardiness. There was some last-minute preparation for our guest's arrival. Gregory Watson's demeanor changed instantly. His scowl transformed into an eager smile. Dr. Morales, what an honor to have you here. We've been following your work with great interest. Elaine raised an eyebrow. Have you? How surprising, considering you didn't seem to know what I did when we first met. Catherine jumped in. A misunderstanding, surely. We have the utmost respect for your accomplishments. Elaine smiled politely but said nothing more. The group moved to the dining table, where Gregory made sure to seat Elaine near him. Throughout dinner, he peppered her with questions about the Arcturi and the upcoming technology exchange, which she deflected with practiced ease. As dessert was being served, Gregory stood and raised his glass. I'd like to propose a toast, he announced, to my daughter Lily and her fiancé Alan, and especially to Dr. Elaine Morales, whose groundbreaking work has opened the door to a new era for humanity. Elaine slowly stood as well. The room fell silent. Thank you, Mr. Watson, but I must correct something. I didn't open this door alone. My grandson Alan has been critical to our success. The communication matrix we developed together is what made sustained contact possible. All eyes turned to Alan in shock. In fact, Elaine continued, the Arcturi have specifically requested that Alan and Lily's wedding be their first public appearance on Earth. They consider it an honor to witness this union between families. Gregory Watson's glass froze halfway, to his lips. Their first public appearance? At our wedding? Yes, Elaine said, her eyes twinkling. They're quite interested in human celebrations, particularly those involving families coming together. They feel it says much about our character as a species. The room erupted in excited chatter. Catherine Watson suddenly appeared at Alan's side. The aliens are coming to the wedding? She whispered frantically. Why didn't you tell us? We need to revise everything, the seating arrangements, the menu, the decorations. Alan looked at his soon-to-be mother-in-law. Why? I thought the Celestial Hotel's grand ballroom was already perfect for a Watson wedding, Elaine squeezed his hand under the table, fighting back a smile. Across the room, Elaine caught his eye and nodded slightly, her expression saying what words didn't need to. Sometimes justice came in unexpected ways. The morning of the wedding arrived with clear skies and warm sunshine. It also brought news that the Arcturi ship had landed at the specially prepared site outside the city. Global media coverage was non-stop, with reporters speculating about the appearance of the aliens and what their visit might mean for humanity. Alan stood in a private room at the Celestial Hotel, adjusting his bow tie. Rick, His uncle helped with his jacket. Nervous? Rick asked. About marrying Lily? No, Alan replied. About everything else, definitely. The door opened and Elaine entered. She wore a stunning gown of deep purple with gold accents, made specially for the occasion. But it wasn't her dress that made Alan stare. Around her neck was a pendant he had never seen before, a swirling design of some silvery blue metal that seemed to catch light from angles that shouldn't be possible. Gran, that's a gift, she said, touching the pendant lightly. The Arcsuri ambassador presented it to me this morning. It's made from a metal not found on Earth. Alan shook his head in wonder. How did the meeting go? Exactly as expected, Elaine said with a small smile. They're eager to meet you and Lily, and they've brought wedding gifts. Gifts? They didn't need to. They insisted. In their culture, gifts at life-bonding ceremonies are extremely important. They symbolize not just good wishes, but formal alliance. A knock at the door interrupted them. A security agent entered and spoke quietly to Elaine. The Arcsuri delegation has arrived at the hotel, she told Alan after the agent left. They're being escorted to the special waiting area we prepared. They'll enter the ceremony after all human guests are seated. Alan took a deep breath. How many came? 5, Elaine said. The ambassador, 2 scientists, and 2 cultural observers. They're very excited about experiencing a human wedding, particularly one involving you. Because I'm your grandson, Elaine adjusted his boutonniere. Partly, but also because of your work. The communication matrix you developed is what made real conversation possible. Before that, we were just exchanging basic information. You helped us understand each other. Another knock at the door. This time it was Gregory Watson who entered, looking uncomfortable in Alan's presence despite his forced smile. Dr. Morales, he said with exaggerated respect. Might I have a moment of your time? Some of our guests have questions about the proper etiquette for meeting our special visitors. Elaine nodded. Of course, I'll be right there. To Alan, she said, I'll see you at the ceremony. Remember, just be yourself. That's who they've come to meet. After they left, Alan stood alone for a moment, gathering his thoughts. The past few weeks had been a whirlwind. The Watsons had completely changed their behavior toward him and his family. Now they boasted to anyone who would listen about their soon-to-be connection to the famous Dr. Morales and her talented grandson. Alan found it both amusing and sad. Gregory had even offered him a high-level position at Watson Interstellar as a wedding gift. Alan had politely declined. The main ballroom of the Celestial Hotel had been transformed for the ceremony. 500 guests filled the rows of chairs, many of them high-ranking government officials and business leaders who had suddenly discovered they were old friends of the Watson family. Media crews stood at the back, though they were prohibited from approaching the area reserved for the Arcsuri. Lily waited in her own preparation room, surrounded by bridesmaids. When Catherine entered, Lily looked up expectantly. Are they here? Have you seen them? She asked. Catherine nodded, her face pale. They're not what I expected. What do you mean? They're beautiful, Catherine said, sounding surprised. Like nothing I've ever seen, and they move so gracefully. Lily smiled. Alan tried to describe them to me, but he said words don't really capture it. Catherine fidgeted nervously with her purse. Lily, darling, I feel I must apologize. For what? For how your father and I treated Alan's grandmother. We didn't know who she was. If we had realized, that's exactly the problem, Mom, Lily interrupted. You shouldn't need to know someone is important to treat them with respect. Catherine looked down. Your father is very focused on connections and advantages. He always has been. I know, Lily said softly. And that's why he's never going to understand why the Arcsuri chose Elaine instead of him. The ceremony was set to begin. Guests settled into their seats, many craning their necks to see the special section where 5 extraordinary beings sat with perfect stillness. The Arcsuri stood about 7 feet tall, with slender bodies covered in what looked like iridescent scales and patterns of blue and green. Their faces were almost feline, with large almond-shaped eyes that shifted color like opals. They wore flowing garments that seemed to be made of living material, constantly shifting in subtle patterns. Gregory Watson sat in the front row, unable to stop staring at them. He had tried repeatedly to approach the aliens before the ceremony, but security had kept him away. His plan to personally welcome them and offer Watson interstellar services had been thwarted. Music began to play, and the wedding party started their procession. When Elaine walked down the aisle as matron of honor, the Arcturi made a soft musical sound and touched their foreheads in what was clearly a gesture of deep respect. Gregory's face tightened. Despite all his wealth and connections, these advanced beings had completely ignored him while showing such deference to a woman he had dismissed at their first meeting. Alan took his place at the altar, watching as Lily began her walk down the aisle. She was radiant in her wedding gown, her eyes fixed on him with love. In that moment, despite all the extraordinary circumstances, all he could think about was how lucky he was to be marrying her. As Lily reached the altar and took Alan's hands, the Arcturi ambassador rose from his seat. This was not part of the planned ceremony, and a murmur ran through the crowd. The ambassador spoke in the musical language of his people, his voice carrying easily through the large room. The translator provided by the WSA converted his words to English. On behalf of the Arcturi people, I wish to honor this union between Alan Morales, builder of bridges between worlds, and Lily Watson, who displays the wisdom to recognize true worth. May your joining strengthen both your families and bring greater understanding between all peoples. The ambassador then presented a small crystalline object that glowed with an inner light. This contains knowledge from our world, the principles of sustainable energy creation that has powered our civilization for 1,000 years. We offer it freely to the family of Dr. Elaine Morales, whose wisdom and dignity first convinced us that humans were worthy of contact. Gregory Watson's face went from pale to red as he realized what was happening. The Arcturi had just handed technology worth countless trillions to Alan, while making it clear that their respect was for Elaine's family, not the Watsons. As the ceremony continued, Gregory leaned toward Catherine and whispered, "We need to fix this, whatever it takes." Catherine looked at her husband with sudden clarity. "No, Greg. What we need to do is learn from it.